They thought Earth was just another backwater planet. They thought humans were primitive, weak, and easily conquered. Commander Zar'thok was about to learn why that assumption had destroyed every species foolish enough to make it. The warning. Klaxons aboard the Galactic Council, monitoring station Perseus 7, had been screaming for 17 seconds before anyone actually noticed. Junior Technician Valmora, a four-armed Kethian with compound eyes that could see in 12 different spectrums, was the first to spot the anomaly on her scanner ray. What she saw made her secondary heart skip a beat. "Commander!" She shrieked across the operations center, her translator implant struggling to convey her panic. "We have an unauthorized vessel crossing the Terran Exclusion Boundary." Commander Theksulan, a seasoned veteran of the Galactic Council's Enforcement Division, immediately straightened from his command console. The Terran Exclusion Boundary wasn't just any territorial marker. It was the most heavily enforced border in the known galaxy. Established 63 years ago, after what the Council now referred to simply as the incident, every species in civilized space knew the rules. Stay at least 10 light-years away from Earth's solar system, unless you had explicit authorization. No exceptions, no excuses. Identify the vessel, Theksulan commanded, his tentacles already moving across his control interface with practiced precision. What species? What classification? Valmora's fingers danced across her holographic display, pulling up data streams. "It's a Krathak heavy cruiser, Commander. The vessel is registered as the Death's Talon, under the command of one Zar'thok the Conqueror. Military-grade weapons systems, enhanced shields," and she paused, her voice dropping to a horrified whisper. "They're not slowing down. They're accelerating toward the inner system." A collective gasp rippled through the operations center. The Krathak were one of the younger spacefaring species in the galaxy, having only achieved faster-than-light travel about 200 years ago. They were aggressive, territorial, and had a well-earned reputation as conquerors. They'd subjugated 17 different worlds in their rapid expansion, and their warrior culture glorified combat and domination above all else. But even the Krathak should have known better than this. "Open a channel," Theksulan ordered, though he already suspected it would be futile. "Priority 1 emergency frequency. Maybe we can stop this before it becomes a disaster." The view screen flickered to life, revealing the interior of the Krathak bridge. Commander Zar'thok was exactly what you'd expect from his species. 3 meters of scaled muscle, 6 arms bristling with ceremonial weapons, and a face that looked like it had been designed by a committee, whose only instruction was make it terrifying. His eyes, a deep crimson that seemed to glow with inner fire, fixed on Theksulan with obvious contempt. "Galactic Council Monitoring Station." Zar'thok's voice was a gravelly rumble that could have been mistaken for distant thunder. "Your transmission is noted and dismissed. We are executing our sovereign right to claim this undefended territory for the Krathak Empire." Theksulan felt his blood temperature drop. "Commander Zar'thok, you are in violation of Galactic Treaty 2247, Section 9, Subsection 12. The Sol system is designated as restricted space under the Terran Protection Protocols. You must reverse course immediately." Zar'thok laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Protection protocols? For those primitive apes? My intelligence reports indicate they barely have a functional space program. A handful of satellites and some crude stations orbiting their planet. They are ripe for conquest, and the Krathak will not be denied our rightful expansion by some outdated treaty designed to coddle the weak. Commander, please." Theksulan tried again, his voice taking on an urgent edge. "You don't understand what you're doing. The protocols exist for a reason. 63 years ago, the Zealoth hegemony made the same mistake you're making now. The Zealoth were weak." Zar'thok interrupted, slamming one of his fists on his command console. "They sent a single exploration vessel. I command a fully armed heavy cruiser with enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. These humans will surrender or be obliterated. Either outcome is acceptable." Theksulan exchanged a look with Valmora. She looked as horrified as he felt. "Commander Zar'thok, I am formally logging your violation and initiating emergency protocols. What you are about to do will have consequences that save your bureaucratic threats." "Council coward," Zar'thok sneered. "By the time your pathetic fleet assembles, I will have claimed this entire system and its resources for my people. The humans will make adequate slaves once we've broken their spirit. Death's Talon out. The screen went dark. For a long moment, the operations center was silent except for the persistent hum of equipment and the soft chirping of alert systems. Then Velmora spoke, her voice small and frightened. "Commander, what do we do?" Vexulan sighed, a gesture that his species had learned from humans during the first contact missions decades ago. "We document everything. We send immediate alerts to both the Galactic Council and to Earth's government." And then he paused, feeling suddenly very old and very tired. "Then we wait for the inevitable." "Shouldn't we send a fleet to intercept?" asked one of the other technicians, a young Prixian whose spots were flashing with anxiety. "There's no time," Vexulan said quietly. "Even if we dispatched every available ship right now, the Death's Talon will reach Earth's orbital space in less than 4 hours. No, the only thing we can do is warn the humans and hope that Zar'thok is smart enough to surrender. And he realizes his mistake. And if he's not?" Velmora asked. Vexulan didn't answer. He didn't need to. Everyone in the operations center had heard the stories, even if the younger staff members dismissed them as exaggerations. Tales of what happened when you threatened Earth, when you brought violence to humanity's doorstep. They would all find out soon enough if those stories were true. Meanwhile, aboard the Death's Talon, Commander Zar'thok was in exceptionally high spirits. His crew moved with military precision around him, preparing weapons systems and running final checks on their assault protocols. The ship's sensors showed the primitive human planet growing larger on their displays. A blue and green marble that looked laughably defenseless report. Zar'thok commanded his tactical officer. "We're detecting approximately 4,000 satellites in various orbital configurations." "Commander," the officer replied, consulting his screens. "Primitive communication and observation equipment, mostly. Some weapons platforms, but nothing that could threaten our shields. There are also 3 small space stations, apparently scientific in nature. No significant military presence detected, and their planetary defenses minimal. Some missile installations, energy weapons on the surface, but all planet-bound. They appear to have no orbital defense grid worth mentioning. Their most advanced weapons appear to be primitive nuclear devices." The tactical officer looked up, mandibles clicking with amusement. "This will be the easiest conquest in our empire's history, Commander." Zar'thok allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. He'd taken significant risks pursuing this mission without formal authorization from the Krathak High Command. But when he returned with an entire star system claimed for the Empire, complete with a subjugated species to provide labor, he would be elevated to the inner circle of warriors, perhaps even given a seat on the War Council itself. The humans had apparently achieved space travel, but had failed to expand beyond their own planet in any meaningful way. They were clearly a species that had reached just far enough to be useful, but not far enough to be dangerous. Perfect targets for assimilation into the Krathak labor pool. "Open a broadcast on all frequencies," Zar'thok ordered. "Let's see if these humans have enough intelligence to surrender peacefully." His communication officer worked for a moment, then nodded. "Channel open, Commander." Broadcasting to the entire planet and all their orbital installations, Zar'thok straightened, putting all 6 arms in a position of dominance, and began his conquest speech, a ritual every Krathak commander performed when claiming new territory. "Humans of the planet Earth," he began, his voice carrying the full weight of his authority. "I am Commander Zar'thok, the conqueror of the Krathak Empire. Your world is now claimed as territory of the Empire. You will surrender immediately and submit to Krathak rule. Resistance is futile. Your primitive technology cannot harm us. Surrender, and you will be treated with the mercy accorded to all conquered peoples. Resist, and your cities will burn. You have one of your Earth hours to respond with total capitulation. Choose wisely." He gestured for the channel to be closed, then turned to his weapons officer. "Begin target acquisition on their major population centers. If they're stupid enough to refuse, I want to be ready to demonstrate our superiority immediately." What Zar'thok didn't know what he couldn't know because his intelligence was 60 years out of date, and he'd ignored every warning the Galactic Council had tried to issue was that Earth's apparent lack of military presence in space wasn't A sign of weakness. It was a choice. In a nondescript building in Colorado, buried under a mountain and shielded by enough concrete and steel to survive a direct nuclear strike, a very different scene was playing out. The United Earth Space Defense Command had been tracking the Death's Talon since it crossed the exclusion boundary. They'd been expecting something like this eventually. History had taught humanity a harsh lesson. The galaxy was full of species who saw human restraint as weakness. Admiral Sarah Chen, commander of UESDC, watched the Krathak broadcast with an expression that revealed nothing. Around her, dozens of the best military minds Earth had to offer monitored screens, analyzed data, and prepared response protocols. When Zar'thok's message ended, she turned to her senior staff. Analysis. Colonel James Morrison, her tactical advisor, pulled up a holographic display. Single heavy cruiser, Krathak design. Based on the power signatures, she's running a Class 7 fusion reactor, possibly upgraded. Shields are standard paradimensional barriers, nothing we haven't encountered before. Weapons appear to be plasma-based, with what looks like a particle beam array for point defense. Crew complement probably round for 100. Weaknesses? Their shields have a half-second refresh cycle. If we hit them with a coordinated strike during that window, we can punch through. Their reactor has thermal exhaust ports that are minimally shielded, standard design flaw for Krathak engineering, and their communications array is external, probably because they prioritize intimidation over tactical security. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. Response recommendations? It was General Marcus Webb, head of the Luna Defense Grid, who spoke next. His image flickered on the main screen, transmitted from the moon's far side command center. Ma'am, recommend we go with Protocol 7. Launch a warning shot to demonstrate capability, then offer one chance to withdraw. If they refuse, we implement full neutralization. Colonel Morrison, you seem like you wanted to say something. Chen observed. Morrison shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, with respect to Protocol 7, this commander ignored Galactic Council warnings, violated treaty boundaries, and just threatened to burn our cities. I'm not sure he's the type to respond rationally to a warning shot. Recommend we skip straight to neutralization before he can target civilian populations. Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment, considering. She'd held this position for 7 years, and in that time, Earth had faced exactly 0 incursions. The galaxy had learned, but apparently, this particular Krathak commander had either not learned, or had decided that the stories about humanity were exaggerations. He was about to discover the truth. We'll give him one chance, Chen decided. Not because he deserves it, but because we're not the monsters he probably thinks we are. Prepare the orbital defense platforms for immediate action. Alert the Luna batteries, and get me Captain Rodriguez on the Yamato. The Yamato, Mum? Morrison looked surprised. That seems like bringing a sledgehammer to swat a fly. Maybe, Chen allowed. But I want Commander Zar'thok to understand exactly how outmatched he is. Sometimes the sledgehammer is the mercy. Better he sees it and surrenders than we have to actually use it. Moments later, Captain Elena Rodriguez appeared on the screen. Behind her, the bridge of the UESS Yamato hummed with barely restrained power. The Yamato was humanity's pride, a battleship that incorporated 60 years of technological development, numerous gifts from friendly alien species who'd shared technology after Earth's military capabilities became known, and some innovations that were purely human in origin. Admiral Rodriguez said crisply, I saw the broadcast. Orders? Move the Yamato into an intercept position, Chen instructed. I want you in visual range of the Krathak cruiser. Deckloak, show them what they're dealing with, and give Commander Zar'thok one opportunity to turn around. If he refuses or makes any hostile move, you are authorized to disable his vessel using minimum necessary force. Understood, ma'am. What if he does something really stupid? Chen's expression hardened. Then you make sure his ship never threatens Earth or anyone else again. But Elena, I want prisoners if possible. This commander needs to answer for violating the exclusion boundary, and the Council will want to question him about what the hell the Krathak leadership was thinking. Admiral. Yamato moving to intercept. We'll be in position in 20 minutes. As the connection closed, Colonel Morrison leaned in. Ma'am, should we alert the public? Not yet. If this goes according to plan, the average citizen won't even know this happened. No point in causing panic over one arrogant alien who's about to get the surprise of his life. She paused, then added quietly, but do make sure our emergency broadcast systems are ready, just in case this goes sideways, on the Death's Talon. Commander Zar'thok was counting down the minutes until his ultimatum expired, completely unaware that moving toward him through the dark of space, invisible and utterly silent, was something that would make him question every assumption he'd ever made about these supposedly primitive humans. The Yamato was coming, and when it arrived, the galaxy was about to be reminded of a lesson first learned 63 years ago. Earth doesn't have a military presence in space because it doesn't need one. It has something much, much worse. Commander Zar'thok was reviewing the final target packages for Earth's major cities when his sensor officer let out a sound that, in Krathak physiology, was the equivalent of a startled yelp. Commander, contact bearing to 7 Mark III, distance 5,000 kilometers and closing fast. Zar'thok's head snapped up. What? There was nothing on sensors a moment ago. Identify. The sensor officer's manipulators flew across his console, his confusion evident in every gesture. Commander, I don't understand. It just appeared. One moment our screens were clear. The next moment there was a massive contact. It's huge, sir. Reading as approximately 800 meters in length. Power signatures are, by the war gods, those readings can't be correct. Show me. Zar'thok commanded, moving to the tactical display. What he saw there made him pause. The contact was indeed enormous, more than twice the length of the Death's Talon. And according to the sensors, it was outputting energy levels that should have been impossible for anything smaller than a small moon. The weapon's signatures alone were suggesting firepower that exceeded anything in the Krathak arsenal. It must be a sensor error, Zar'thok decided. Recalibrate and scan again. These primitive humans couldn't possibly have built something like that. Recalibration complete. Commander, readings are unchanged. And sir, the sensor officer's voice dropped. They're hailing us, on screen, Zar'thok ordered, straightening to his full intimidating height. Whatever this was, he would not show weakness. The view screen flickered, and Zar'thok found himself looking at the bridge of what was clearly a military vessel. The central command chair was occupied by a human female in a crisp uniform, her dark hair pulled back, her expression calm and professional. Behind her, the bridge hummed with activity, dozens of stations, holographic displays showing tactical information, and an atmosphere of disciplined efficiency that Zar'thok had to grudgingly admit was impressive for such a supposedly primitive species. Commander Zar'thok, the human said, her voice carrying easily through the translation systems. I am Captain Elena Rodriguez of the United Earth Starship Yamato. You are in violation of multiple galactic treaties and have illegally entered restricted space. I am authorized to give you one opportunity to reverse course and exit the Sol system immediately. Zar'thok felt his primary heart rate increase, not from fear, he told himself, but from anticipation. So the humans did have some military capability after all. That would make the conquest more satisfying. Captain Rodriguez, he replied, putting all the contempt he could into her name. Your vessel is impressive for a species of your limited development. However, you are one ship facing a Krathak heavy cruiser. I have conquered 17 worlds. Do you truly believe you can intimidate me into abandoning my rightful claim? Rodriguez's expression didn't change. Commander, I don't think you fully understand your situation. Let me clarify. First, the Yamato isn't a ship, it's a battleship, and it carries enough firepower to reduce your cruiser to its component atoms in approximately 11 seconds. Second, the Yamato isn't alone. There are currently 73 weapons platforms in Earth orbit, each capable of independent targeting and firing solutions. The moon hosts an additional 40 to heavy batteries with a combined output that could vaporize a small planet, and that's just what we're willing to show you. She leaned forward slightly, and for the first time, Zar'thok saw something other than professional calm in her eyes. It was a hardness, a certainty that he recognized because he'd seen it before in the eyes of warriors who had killed, and would kill again without hesitation. Third, Rodriguez continued, you threatened to burn our cities. You threatened our families, our children, our home. So let me be absolutely clear. The only reason you're still alive right now is because Admiral Chen believes in giving everyone one chance to do the right thing. That chance expires in exactly 60 seconds. After that, we stop asking nicely." Zar'thok laughed, though he noticed several of his bridge crew shifting uncomfortably. "Empty threats. I see nothing on my sensors that matches your claims. Your weapons platforms are primitive satellites. Your moon bases don't even register on our scans." "That's because they're not active," Rodriguez said simply. "We don't leave loaded weapons lying around where accidents might happen. But if you'd like a demonstration," she glanced at someone off-screen. "Lieutenant Chen, activate Platform Delta 7. Weapons free. Target the asteroid at coordinates 447 by 921. On the Death's Talon's tactical display, Zar'thok watched as a seemingly ordinary communications satellite suddenly came alive with energy. Power readings spiked 2 levels that made his sensor officer hiss in disbelief. A section of the satellite opened, revealing what was very clearly a weapons ray. A lance of coherent energy, bright enough to momentarily overload the visual sensors, reached out across 300,000 kilometers of space and touched an asteroid that their scans showed was approximately 2 kilometers across. The asteroid didn't explode. It didn't shatter. It simply ceased to exist, converted to plasma and gas in an instant. The bridge of the Death's Talon was absolutely silent. "That was Platform Delta 7, Rodriguez said calmly. "One of our older models. It's rated for small to medium orbital debris clearing. The platform that's currently targeting your reactor core is one of our newer designs. It's rated for capital ship engagement." She paused. "You now have 30 seconds. Zar'thok felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of conquest, doubt. That asteroid had been solid rock and ice. The energy required to instantly vaporize it was, he couldn't even calculate it. And the human claimed that was one of their weaker platforms? "Commander," his tactical officer said quietly, "our shields wouldn't even slow down a weapon like that. If they have dozens of those platforms." Silence. Zar'thok snapped, though his mind was racing. This couldn't be happening. The intelligence reports had said the humans were barely capable of interplanetary travel. They had primitive rockets and basic stations. Where had this technology come from? 15 seconds, Rodriguez announced. Pride warred with survival instinct in Zar'thok's mind. He had built his reputation on never backing down, never showing weakness. To retreat now, to surrender to these apes, it would mean dishonor. His crew would lose respect. His enemies in the Krathak High Command would use it against him. But that asteroid had simply vanished. "Commander Zar'thok," Rodriguez said, and her voice had taken on a different quality now, not threatening, but almost sad. "I know what you're thinking. You're thinking about pride, about reputation, about what your superiors will say if you back down. And I'm telling you, as someone who has had to make hard decisions, none of that matters if you're dead. Your crew doesn't deserve to die because you're too stubborn to admit you made a mistake." 5 seconds, in the Galactic Council monitoring station. Valmora was gripping her console so hard her manipulators were leaving dents. The entire operations center was watching the standoff in absolute silence. They had all seen the weapons demonstration. They had all run the calculations. "He's going to do something stupid," she whispered. "I can feel it." Xulin didn't respond. He was watching Commander Zar'thok's face on the screen, reading the body language that was universal among warrior species: pride, anger, desperation. "A dangerous combination." "Time," Rodriguez announced. "Commander Zar'thok, what is your decision?" And in that moment, Zar'thok made the worst choice of his life. Instead of the wisdom of retreat, he chose the foolishness of aggression. He convinced himself that the demonstration had been a trick, that the humans couldn't possibly have the firepower they claimed, that his shields and his weapons and his warrior spirit would see him through. "Weapons officer," he said quietly, "target that human battleship. All forward batteries, fire." The Death's Talon unleashed everything it had. Plasma cannons, particle beams, missile pods, a torrent of destructive energy that could have leveled a city or carved through the hull of any ship in the Krathak fleet. The bridge crew watched with satisfaction as their weapons reached out toward the Yamato and accomplished absolutely nothing. The human battleship's shields flared into visibility as the weapons struck a shimmering barrier of force that absorbed the entire barrage without even flickering. It was like throwing pebbles at a mountain. "Well," Captain Rodriguez said, and Zar'thok could hear the disappointment in her voice. "You made your choice. I'm sorry for your crew. All batteries, fire at will. Target their weapons systems and engines. I want them disabled, not destroyed." What happened next would be analyzed by military strategists across the galaxy for decades to come. The orbital platforms activated in sequence, their weapons arrays coming online with terrifying precision. The lunar batteries followed suit, targeting solutions calculated in microseconds by quantum computers. And the Yamato itself, that massive battleship that the Krathak commander had dismissed as a bluff, opened up with firepower that redefined Zar'thok's understanding of what was possible. The Death's Talon's shields lasted approximately 3 seconds. The targeting was surgical. Coherent energy beams, traveling at the speed of light, struck the cruiser's weapons systems one after another. Plasma turrets exploded. Missile bays were sealed shut by molten metal. The particle beam array simply vanished in a flash of superheated gas. The Krathak ship's engines were next not destroyed, but damaged just enough to leave the vessel crippled and drifting. Through it all, Zar'thok stood frozen at his command console, unable to process what was happening. His mighty warship, the vessel that had been feared across 17 conquered worlds, was being systematically dismantled like a child's toy. His crew was shouting, running, trying desperately to respond, but there was nothing they could do. The humans were operating on a completely different level of military capability. The entire engagement lasted 47 seconds. When it was over, the Death's Talon hung in space, powerless and helpless. Emergency life support was functioning, but nothing else. They were completely at the mercy of the humans they had come to conquer. Rodriguez's face reappeared on the screen. "Commander Zar'thok, your weapons are disabled. Your engines are disabled. Your shields are offline. You are no longer a threat. Galactic Council enforcement vessels have been notified and are en route to take you and your crew into custody. You will be charged with multiple treaty violations, attempted planetary invasion, and about 24 other crimes. I hope your pride was worth it." Zar'thok couldn't speak. His throat had locked up. His muscles had gone rigid. He had been so certain, so confident. How had he been so wrong? "For what it's worth," Rodriguez continued, and her voice had softened slightly, "you're not the first to make this mistake. 63 years ago, the Zelith hegemony sent a fleet, not one ship, but an entire battle group to claim Earth. They thought we were primitive too. That didn't end well for them either. The galaxy tried to warn you, Commander. The Galactic Council tried to warn you. We tried to warn you, but you wouldn't listen." She paused, then added something that would haunt Zar'thok for the rest of his life. "The thing you need to understand about humans, Commander, is that we spent our entire evolutionary history fighting each other. We got very, very good at war. When we finally achieved space travel and met other species, do you know what we did? We looked at the wars and conflicts happening across the galaxy, and we made a choice. We decided to keep our military capabilities close to home, to not project force unless absolutely necessary, to try to be part of a peaceful galactic community. But that choice to be peaceful was never because we couldn't fight. It was because we chose not to. And when someone like you comes along and threatens our home, threatens our families, decides to test whether our restraint is actually weakness," Rodriguez's eyes hardened again. "That's when you find out exactly how good at war we really are." The screen went dark. In the UESS command center, Admiral Chen watched the tactical display showing the disabled Krathak cruiser. Around her, her staff was already coordinating with the Galactic Council, arranging for the transfer of prisoners, filing the formal reports that would document yet another violation of the Terran Exclusion Boundary. "Ma'am," Colonel Morrison said quietly, "we're receiving multiple communications from Council representatives. They want to know if we're going to increase our military presence in the outer system. Given this incursion, tell them no," Chen replied. "Tell them the same thing we always tell them. Earth doesn't need to project force to maintain peace. We just need to make sure that everyone remembers what happens when you break the peace. And if someone else decides to test us, Chen smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. Then we'll give them the same choice we gave Commander Zar'thok. One chance to do the right thing. After that, she shrugged. After that, they get to learn the same lesson. The hard way. On the Perseus 7 monitoring station, Velmora was still shaking, her multiple hearts beating rapidly. Commander Thexulan, I don't understand. How do the humans have such advanced technology? They only achieved space travel a little over a century ago. Thexulan settled into his command chair, suddenly feeling every one of his many years. That's the thing most species don't understand about humans, Velmora. When they set their mind to something, when they're motivated by fear or necessity or protection of their home, they don't just adapt, they excel. After the Zealoth attack 63 years ago, humanity realized they were vulnerable. So they did what humans do, they learned. They innovated, they collaborated with other species, and they built defenses that would ensure no one could ever threaten their planet again. But that level of firepower, that precision, that technology, is what happens when you take a species that evolved through constant conflict, give them a reason to be afraid, and then give them time to prepare. The humans aren't the strongest species in the galaxy, or the most numerous, or the most advanced in most areas. But when it comes to military technology, when it comes to defending their home, Thexulan gestured at the tactical display showing the crippled Krathak cruiser. That's what you get. Velmora was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she asked, do you think this will stop others from trying? For a while, Thexulan said. Every generation, there's someone like Zar'thok, someone who thinks the stories are exaggerated, who thinks they can succeed where others failed, who looks at Earth's peaceful demeanor and mistakes it for weakness. And every generation, humanity has to teach that lesson again. It seems inefficient, perhaps, but it's also very human. They could spread their military across the galaxy, could establish bases and patrol routes and project force the way other major powers do. They have the technology and the capability, but they choose not to. They choose to stay home, to live peacefully, to only fight when someone brings the fight to them. Thexulan looked at the image of Earth on his screen, that blue and green marble that had become one of the most respected and feared locations in known space. In a galaxy full of species that conquered and expanded and projected power, there's something almost admirable about a species that simply says we will protect our home, and nothing more. Velmora considered this, and Commander Zar'thok will spend the rest of his life in a Galactic Council detention facility, thinking about his choices, along with his entire crew, who will become living examples of what happens when you violate the Terran Exclusion Boundary. The Krathak High Command will issue formal apologies, will pay reparations, and will make very sure that their younger commanders understand that Earth is off limits, just like all the other species that tried. Exactly. Aboard the crippled Death's Talon, Commander Zar'thok sat in his command chair, surrounded by emergency lighting and the smell of burned circuits. His crew was silent, shocked, defeated. Galactic Council vessels were approaching, coming to take them into custody. He kept replaying that moment in his mind, the moment when his weapons hit the human battleship's shields and accomplished nothing, the moment when he realized that everything he thought he knew was wrong, the moment when his pride had cost him everything. One of his junior officers approached cautiously. Commander, the Council vessels are requesting permission to board. Zar'thok wanted to rage, to fight, to do something, anything other than accept this humiliation. But what was the point? The humans had proven they could have destroyed his ship anytime they wanted. They'd chosen mercy, chosen to disable rather than destroy. In a strange way, that was even more humiliating than being obliterated would have been. Grant permission, he said quietly, and send a message to Krathak High Command. Tell them I failed. Tell them the humans are not what our intelligence reported. Tell them the stories are true. As the Council forces began boarding procedures, Zar'thok looked at the tactical display one last time. The Yamato was still there, hanging in space, a silent guardian. Other platforms were visible now to the orbital defense grid that could have killed him instantly, but had instead chosen to disable his ship, to take prisoners, to show mercy. He had come here expecting to conquer a primitive species. Instead, he had learned a lesson that would echo through his mind for the rest of his days. There is a vast difference between a species that cannot fight and a species that chooses not to fight. And heaven help you if you force them to make that choice. As Zar'thok was led away in restraints, one of the council officers escorting him was a veteran who had served during the Zealoth incident 63 years ago. The old soldier looked at the Krathak commander and said something that would become legend across the galaxy. You know what the scariest thing about humans is? What you saw today, the Yamato, the platforms, all that firepower. That's just what they keep in orbit around their home planet. We've never seen what they keep hidden deeper in their system. And honestly, I hope we never have to. The recording of Commander Zar'thok's attempted invasion would become required viewing at every military academy in the Galactic Council. The Terran Exclusion Boundary would be respected by every species for another generation, and Earth would continue its quiet existence, its people going about their daily lives, mostly unaware of how close they had come to war. But in the depths of space, in secret facilities scattered across the Sol system, humanity continued to innovate, to prepare, to build defenses against threats they hoped would never come, because they had learned the hard lesson that all peaceful societies eventually learn. Peace is not the absence of the capacity for violence. Peace is the choice to not use that capacity until someone forces your hand. And when that happens, you make very sure they never force anyone's hand again.